Okay, Yves Engler, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Why don't we start by just introducing yourself? I feel like you may be one of the lesser known, even amongst the politically savvy people in this race. So who is Yves Engler, and where did he come from?
Well, I came from I was born and raised in Vancouver. I live in Montreal, Jojage, now last 25 years. I've been active on the left for 25 years in activism, student activism, anti-corporate globalization movement, Haiti solidarity, anti-war, anti-imperialist activism, and I've written 13 books, mostly on Canadian foreign policy. And I'm running to be the leader on a platform challenging capitalism, challenging imperialism, in favor of economic democracy, in favor of degrowth and decolonization.
That is a lot, but I'll start with this question, which is, I mean, obviously a vacancy was created at the top of the NDP because of let's call them failures of the previous leader to capitalize on concerns and capitalize on I think a general sense that Canadians are really struggling. So when you are looking and reflecting on where the party has been in terms of what went wrong under the last leader of the NDP, what do you think went wrong with the party? How did the party end up here now?
Well, what went wrong is not just that there's only 7 seats, MPs. What went wrong is that on the terms that were laid down by the party elite, they failed. I mean, they pushed for a let's be very modest. Let's try to be nice with the Globe and Mail and the Toronto Star and CBC. Let's not push bold policy, and that's going to help us electorally. There's always been an important faction of the NDP that doesn't just see the aim as like winning seats in the House of Commons, but sees the aim of the party as transformation, as a tool of social justice. And what the NDP did was that they basically moved away from being a tool of social justice, and then they also failed at the aim of the more conservative faction of the party.
Hmm.
So, what we're arguing for, what my campaign is about seeing the party as a tool of fundamental change, of grassroots activism, of social movement building, and of fundamentally changing um, Canada. And we have a situation where we have this billionaire class that is just getting more and more obscenely wealthy and has ever more influence over political affairs. We also have a situation where almost all the ecological indicators are going in the wrong direction. Capitalism is dependent on constant growth and profit maximization, which is simply antithetical to sustainability. And we also have a situation where Canada has enabled a live stream Holocaust over the past 2 years in Gaza. So you look around, and there's an absolute need for confronting power, for major transformation, for radical thinking. And that's what we're trying to bring to this leadership race. It's basically a vision of the party, not just as a parliamentary wing, but as a social movement force.
Right. And I think what you're getting at, though, is, and I've certainly had these observations about the NDP, both at the Ontario party and the broader federal party, is that you have these sort of like two furies inside the party, and one is the like the grassroots, the working class, the ones who are I think you are definitely addressing with some of your ideas about capitalism run amok, and then there's the other, for lack of a better term, call it the limousine liberal class, which is, we're progressive, but we're also very, very comfortable. As long as like our comfort's not interrupted too hard, we're for sustainability. So long as we don't have to, we'll drive an EV instead of a gas powered car, kind of ideal. Um, those kind of have had to coexist. The two furies have had to kind of coexist, and I think you make a powerful point that trying to coexist has been a failure. And but I mean, is is that the way you see this is like going to have to play out? Like the sort of working class revolutionaries in the party, we've tried to do it the other way. Now it's kind of their turn, and if you lose that other half of the party, then maybe that's the path to re-energizing the NDP more generally.
Well, I think there is definitely a need to re-energize. The party has alienated the grassroots, has alienated the activist movements, has alienated the militant working class organizing. So my aim and our campaign's aim is to build that, to be part of that and to strengthen those forces. Um, would some people, if I became leader of the NDP, are there some people that would leave the party? I think it's hard to imagine that wouldn't be the case. Do we want, rather than people just leaving, do we want people to get on board an effort at fundamental transformation? That's what we want. We also, of course, want to bring in new people, and that's what, a large extent, the people who are organizing my campaign, the hundreds and hundreds of volunteers that are working on it, they're people who have been alienated by the NDP, and they're only kind of part of this because a lot of them were, had pretty active in the NDP in years past and have just basically tuned out because it wasn't, it was no longer a vehicle of serious social transformation. And also, I should say, there's just a real top-down kind of anti-autonomy dynamic that goes on with regards to the headquarters and the riding associations or EDAs. So there's some of that that's not just ideological. It is partly tied to ideology, but it's something broader. But yeah, I think if you look at the state of the world, I mean, we have uh, the Thompson family that's worth almost 100 billion. You have the Zhao. I think he's now the richest Canadian according to Maclean's. Yesterday, 2 days ago, it's something like 65 billion in that kind of range. One individual. This is obscene. Billionaires shouldn't exist. 100 millionaires shouldn't exist. I'm not sure if 10 millionaires should exist. We need to be honest about it and say it's not just that capitalism has run amok. Capitalism is about concentrating wealth. It is about attacking working class institutions. That's why we have, private sector unionization rate in Canada is now at the lowest rate since the Rand formula, since basically World War II, where there was, the formal funding structure for unions. While of course you have these, more and more of these billionaires. So we say that we live in a democracy, but can you really have a democracy when there's some who have multiple billions and others making $16 an hour? Do we really have equal say over social affairs? And what we're saying is that, we do have nominal democracy in the political arena, but we need to expand that to the economic arena.
Right.
Capitalism is all about $1, one vote. Economic democracy is about one person, one vote. Where there is social labor in significant form, there should be some form of social ownership. Is that a co-op? Is that locally owned? Is that provincially owned, nationally owned, internationally owned? That's, depends on each firm. And there should be workplace democracy where the workforce has a say over the conditions and some say over the production of what is actually produced. So this is a fundamentally alternative vision from this capitalist model that we have of constant wealth concentration, ecological destruction. And I think not only is there a lot of people open to the idea of abolishing billionaires, uh, I think it's absolutely necessary when it comes to ecologically.
Right. I could talk about abolishing billionaires all night, but let me um, kind of drill down to how we get to the vision you're talking about, which number one is we've seen the working class vote kind of leave the NDP, especially in like NDP like epicenters like Hamilton, Windsor, London. They haven't gone to the Liberals or the Greens. They've, for the most part, gone to the Conservatives. So number one, how do you reorient that, um, get the working class vote when they've kind of gone to the opposite of what you're talking about, supporting the Conservatives? And number two is, well, let's do number one first. How do you win them back from the Conservatives?
Well, I think we kind of have to understand why a lot of I don't know what would be considered the industrial working class it has tended towards a conservatism in recent years. First of all, it's important to note there has been a strain of that conservatism. It's not just recent years. There's a longer history there. Famously, some of sort of construction workers and union attacking anti-war activists in a famous example in New York City in the late 60s. Now, sort of attacking the hippies kind of dynamic.
Yeah,
But more concretely, uh, I think that the what's happened, of course, is there has been a weakening of labor's power. Industry has benefited from corporate globalization, from the neoliberal kind of removal of restrictions on capital going wherever. And so there's people, a lot of people, working class people, particularly men, who are quite vulnerable, and they basically just want to keep what they got. It's a very defensive kind of a situation,
right,
the automotive sector, steel, and so they've kind of gravitated to the politicians in Ontario. Ford, who has kind of framed himself as a working man's guy, and to some extent with Polyev, who's also done some of that framing. Part of it, I think, is that there is a lack of vision being offered by the left.
right,
And there's a lack of saying that we need not just sort of, oh, we're just going to defend what we got. And you see that with the unions, recently, where they're basically trying, the unions now are defending NAFTA or Kuzma. That's like, Trump is destabilizing the good old times of Kuzma, where, of course, 30 years ago, the left was hostile to this whole model of giving corporations greater power to move where they wanted and become more dependent on the U.S. and the like. Um, so the if there's no other alternative vision of like something more forward looking, more positive, then that defensive kind of position makes sense. Now, so also I think with Polyev has done a good job on the housing crisis and pretending like he's offers an alternative. He's played well to some xenophobia on that
mm,
and a sense of housing costs going up, and it's because of the immigrants. That's kind of whether he says that directly or people in and around him doing that. And so that needs to be countered by in the housing question very concretely. Well, the housing crisis is not because of foreigners. The housing crisis is because the government has spent 30 years of getting itself out of building public housing, co-op housing,
right,
and we've put a model of giving ever more control over housing to profit-seeking, real estate investment trusts. We're calling on turning the real estate investment trusts into into co-op housing. So we're all offering a different vision in the housing that moves us out completely outside of the capitalist dynamic of something that should be a right, or our government even believes is a right, but making it an actual right. Now, so I think some of that is going on, and I think unions have to have an alternative vision. If you go back to like the Auto Pact of 1965, part of why the U.S. went along with this is because there was a real threat of building, Canadian cars and publicly owned Canadian cars. We have to have a vision of like, if you want to get some sort of like uh, social democratic um, model, there has to be some force out there calling for socialism. And then
Right.
capitalists will give you the social democracy. If the capitalists, all they feel the pressure from is to go further and further to the right, further and further to more to the wealthy, further and further to more power to the corporations, then that's the nature of where things are going to go. And so I think that there's this relationship between the unions and the NDP where neither faction is really offering an alternative. But I think there's lots of openness within unions to start talking about economic democracy, start talking about actual gains for the working class. But it has to kind of start from somewhere. And I think that our campaign is gone some small way in putting the idea of anti-capitalism, the idea of economic democracy onto the political radar.
The other piece of this, the part two of it is you're talking about like long-term systemic change. And and this isn't just an Yves Engler thing. I mean, I've talked to a lot of politicians who are like, we got to change the system. And I'm like, I agree. My concern is because you're talking about things that may take years to come into full effect, there just isn't the memory and imagination on the part of the public to see that through. So how do you deliver systemic change when people want sort of like immediate results? How do you balance those
Well, let's
expectations?
let's take an immediate result. Okay, so about 23 billion outstanding in student debt.
Yeah.
The government just contracted three of these naval surface combatant that have Tomahawk missiles that go 1,500 kilometers to blow stuff up. 22 billion for three of those up front, and then probably 70 billion over life cycle. Cancel the contract, get rid of all the student debt. I don't know. Maybe it can't happen tomorrow, but probably 3, 6 months within a year, cancel the student debt. That's possible. I agree that if we're talking about the housing crisis, we got 60,000 every night on the streets, abject poverty, towards a 250,000 at some point in the year across the country. That can't be. I agree. The solution's not going to come tomorrow. You can't. We're calling for a minimum 100,000 new social housing, co-op housing units every year, minimum 100,000. And that's going to take a while to, it takes a while to build it, and then the people on the streets. It's not just housing in the short term. A big picture, in large part, it is just housing. But in the short term, there's all kinds of, mental health issues. There's a whole cycles of poverty, whatever. But so this isn't going to happen overnight. But you
Mm,
can start playing some role in reducing, or at least stopping it going in the wrong direction, which has been going in recent years. Um, and so yeah, I think there's some of the solutions that are not they are pretty immediate, or on the climate issue,
yeah.
right? I mean, you certainly don't build a new pipeline. We believe we should shut down the tar sands, and we should give a timeline for shutting it down. Is it 2 years? Is it 5 years? Instead, what we're doing is they're just growing. It's just
Mm,
growing. We know that the climate crisis is just picking up, and yet we're expanding the tar sands, and Mark Carney wants to go further. No one else in the NDP leadership race is even talking about shutting down the tar sands. So I agree with you that you're not going to go from this billionaire dominated, ecocidal, genocide promoting political system that we currently have to economic democracy, an internationalist minded economic democracy overnight. But you have to start talking about it first piece. And second piece, if you don't have political force that's raising these issues, the capitalists are going to keep demanding more and more and more. They're going to keep pushing back against these slight increases in capital gains taxes. They're going to push back against the digital service tax. They're going to push back against, industrial carbon pricing. They're just going to keep pushing for more and more and more. And so we have to start somewhere in terms of, even if we want to maintain the remnants of social democracy that we have, the 15.5% of a unionization rate in the private sector, we have to be, offering some sort of alternative, or they're going to keep chipping away at it. And we know that because we look down south and we have like it's about I think an 8% or 7% unionization rate in the private sector. You have
Mm.
Donald Trump as the president. That's the logic of the billionaires, running everything. Is you have people like Donald Trump in the White House.
I would also add that I think a lot of the billionaires in the United States know Donald Trump is unremarkable, untalented, unable to raise money if he wasn't like the corrupt leader of the United States. I mean it's kind of a telling tale that people who actually build things, like you know Jeff Bezos or Tim Cook from Apple, will acquiesce to Trump when they know Donald Trump couldn't create Amazon or create turn Apple into a $1 trillion corporation.
Well, I think we're seeing that these wealthy billionaires, they prioritize profit over even arguably protecting their own interests in the medium and long term.
Mm.
'Cause I think ultimately the Donald Trump direction is probably not even good for their own interests in the medium or long term. But they just see, here you have the authoritarian. I'm just going to make nice with the authoritarian, even if it slides into open fascism. They seem to be willing to prioritize their short, maybe medium term profit to even maybe a more stable medium long term capitalism.
I want to know too, anyone who looks you up online will immediately know you kind of have like the force of conviction that you have, been arrested, you've been, harassed and a lot of people, I would call you a troublemaker. That's not to mitigate your activism, but I mean that's, to sort of pin you as sort of like the kind of politician you are, the kind of role you have in this leadership race. You're the troublemaker. Um, my question then is, um, we have an electorate, I think, that is very kind of cautious, perhaps maybe too cautious, and that's how I think you get Jagmeet Singh as a leader. I think that's how you get Mark Carney as prime minister. Um, no matter how much like NDP voters may like your message, may like the ideas of social democratic ideals. We certainly saw Zohran Mamdani in New York City win on a platform of uh, some social democratic ideas. Is is it a concern for you that maybe the electorate might see Yves Engler as maybe too much of a troublemaker to imbue the powers of federal leadership?
Yeah, I think that's certainly a plausible scenario. I think that's even a scenario among NDP members that there's a certain cautiousness on that. I don't have a problem with that. People also say, he's not I've never been a politician. Some people claim I'm not charismatic enough. I don't smile enough and stuff like that. So that's all. I think that's all kind of legitimate. What I think people can be confident in with me is that I am willing and in this to confront power. I'm not in it to get power for myself. I'm in it to confront power. I believe in these ideas. And I think people do want a fighter as well, right?
Mm.
You're not gonna get rid of the billionaire class without fighting. Let's be honest about it, right? We're not going to just sort of ask nice and make nice with the Toronto Star and think that that's where we're going to get some fundamental change. So I think there's a lot of people in the NDP orbit, younger people particularly, who have watched this live stream genocide in Gaza, and they've seen how the the political and media establishment and broader, capitalist corporate establishment have all basically gone along with it, supported it, enabled it, and it's they're stunned. They see that the system is very corrupt. I think also younger people who are seeing the cost of housing skyrocket and seeing that the difficulty of living on your own and the whole housing question. I think people are very troubled by that. Also, I think the climate, the indicators, all the ecological indicators are getting worse and worse. So I think there's a fair bit of people who are pretty fed up,
Mm.
and they're willing to sort of say, I'm not just going to play by like the official rules. And I kind of want somebody who's not just going to play by the official rules. And is that a ticket towards electoral success for the NDP? I'm not going to say that I I'd go to Vegas and make a bet on the fact that that's the case. But I what I will make a bet on is that the NDP is better, or Canada is better off having an NDP that's putting forward bold ideas and trying to enact those bold ideas, then focused on, well, can we just get some more seats in the House of Commons? They tried that. It failed. I mean, they failed on their own terms. It's 7 seats operating on that kind of logic. So to me, the indicators internally within the party and the indicators more broadly in terms of societal indicators are that it's time for a bold alternative. And so that's what I'm offering to members and also non-members, people who are, been maybe were a member at some point, or people who kind of don't trust electoral politics. Join the party, vote for an insurgent left, anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist candidate that is not. I'm not changing what I'm saying. I've been doing it with 4 months of campaigning. I'm using the word capitalism more than I was, 4 months ago, when I was more focused on narrow foreign policy issues. If anything, we're getting more kind of radical in our critique and our language. People can check out the platform. It was done in a wonderful way, very open, democratic way by 45 activists and researchers and many others who had input. So we're trying to run a different type of campaign where it's people power, it's mobilize, it's be part of this broader left social movement activism.
And maybe to wrap up, I understand you have filed your registration papers but now.
Yeah, I went yesterday in Ottawa, Monday, and we delivered it to the headquarters, and now it's in the hands of the all-powerful three-person vetting committee to decide if this campaign that has about 1,000 or more than 1,000 registered volunteers is allowed to formally be part of the race, and whether NDP members are allowed to decide if they like or don't like these policies and ideas.
Are you concerned that you will be vetted out as it were?
We are definitely concerned about that. That's why we have done what we've done in terms of waiting in the vetting and building momentum, building releasing the platform. That's kind of against the normal idea of how a campaign you would want to release your platform closer to the end of the race, which is not till the end of March. But we did it this way in part because we want to have our ideas out in the public to know what we're offering to this race, to the members in this race. So it makes it a little bit more difficult for this three-person vetting committee to just exclude the campaign.
Well, I'm sure listeners in Guelph will be interested to learn about more what you're offering in about an hour as we go to air on Thursday. You when you will be at 10C here in Guelph. So until then, Yves Engler, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks a lot for having me.